G'day! So, today we're heading way out west to Perth, Western Australia. Now, you've probably heard it called one of the most isolated cities on the planet. But what does that actually mean? Is it isolated in a bad way? Dull, boring, desolate? Or is there maybe something else going on here? Well, let's dive in and find out.
So here's the big question, right? Is Perth's whole reputation for being dull and desolate actually fair? Before we can even begin to answer that, we've got to wrap our heads around just how incredibly isolated this place really is. It all kind of boils down to this one number, 2,100 kilometers. That's how far you have to travel to get to the next major city, Adelaide. And in between, pretty much nothing but desert. I mean, that level of remoteness, it shapes absolutely everything about life here. But despite being so far from everything, Perth is this massive, sprawling city. We're talking about 2.4 million people living here. And this city, it's the absolute engine room for the entire state of Western Australia. A state that is, and I mean this, unbelievably rich, all thanks to its huge resources industry. So, the real story of Perth is all about this contrast. On one side, you've got these economic juggernauts, iron ore, gold, oil, and gas that bring in incredible wealth. But that also creates this crazy boom and bust cycle that really defines the city's ups and downs. And then, on the other side, you've got this amazing Mediterranean climate and a super casual, laid-back way of life. Oh, and you can't forget the huge green spaces like Kings Park. It's actually bigger than Central Park in New York, and these incredibly deep blue skies. Put it all together, and you start to get a feel for what this place is all about.
Now, when you actually start exploring the city, you see another one of those contrasts. The old-school city center. Look, to be honest, it's looking a little tired these days. But then you get to the new developments, like Elizabeth Quay right there on the Swan River, and wow, it's genuinely special. It's modern, it's vibrant, it's just buzzing with life.
And while we're on the subject of the city, okay, I gotta be straight with you about one of its so-called landmarks. I will apologize for what's behind me here, the Perth Bell Tower. It was supposed to be this big, iconic thing, but yeah, it's really turned out to be a little disappointing. But hey, a city's character is about way more than its monuments, right?
The food scene, though, definitely not disappointing. Over at that fancy Elizabeth Quay, I got myself a $40 Wagyu burger. And it was excellent. I'm giving it a solid 7.8 out of 10. And that really shows you the kind of quality you can find if you know where to look. And look, you just can't talk about Perth's culture without talking about footy. Aussie rules football, that is. The 60,000-seat Optus Stadium, that is the absolute heart of the sport here. This isn't rugby, it's not soccer, it's something completely, uniquely Australian. And when the two local rivals, the West Coast Eagles and the Dockers, go head-to-head, the entire city just comes alive. It's incredible.
All right, so we've had a good look at the city, but to really get a sense of Perth's isolation, you've got to leave it behind. So let's head north and see what happens when the big city just stops.
And believe me, the dividing line is, well, it's stark. You get to a place called Two Rocks, and suburbia just ends. Bam! North of that point, for the next 145 kilometers, the permanent population is less than 2,000 people. That's it. It's just bushland, a few farms, and a handful of tiny little towns clinging to the coast. I mean, just look at this contrast. You go from a metro area with 2.4 million people to little towns like Gilderton with fewer than 200 residents, or Seabird with just over 100. The sheer scale of the emptiness is honestly staggering. It feels like a completely different planet, and it's only about an hour's drive from the city.
So what's life really like in these little settlements just dotted along the Indian Ocean? Well, it's a life that's all about the sea, about being self-reliant, and sometimes it's a real battle against the elements. Take Seabird, for instance. It's a tiny little town. We're talking just over 100 people. A few years back, they had to build this huge seawall because houses were literally about to fall into the Indian Ocean. It's just a perfect example of the rugged, sometimes precarious life people live out here. Next up the coast is Lancelin, which is actually my hometown. Now, with about 800 people, it's the big smoke on this stretch of coast. It's got all the essentials, a service station, a bakery, 2 pubs, and a pretty amazing bay. But the real draw card? The massive sand dunes right behind the town. They're a huge hit for sandboarding and quad bike tours. Okay, drive another 50 kilometers north, and the story gets even weirder and more interesting. This is where you find a place that is truly unlike anywhere else. It's a whole settlement of corrugated iron shacks called Wedge Island. And in a lot of ways, it's a town that, officially speaking, just shouldn't exist. Now, the most important thing to get about this place is that these aren't permanent homes. They're holiday shacks. And the government, well,
The government does not like these people being here. For decades, they've tried almost everything to get these shacks demolished, but time and time again, the community has just held on. It's a pretty incredible story of pure resilience.
Life out at Wedge is totally off-grid. You've got to bring your own water, you've got to bring your own power. Most of these shacks went up back in the 1970s. In fact, my wife's family built their shack right here in 1974. It's just this incredibly unique place, like a real throwback to a simpler time. It's a whole community built on nothing but self-reliance.
All right, our journey up the coast is going to end about 40 kilometers further north in a town called Cervantes. It's here, after we've seen the modern city and this rugged, empty coastline, that we can finally start to pull it all together and figure out a verdict.
So our last stop is Cervantes, and it's famous for one thing, the lobster shack. Now, I actually went for the fresh prawns, which were amazing, by the way, a solid 7 out of 10. But the real story here isn't just the food. It's about the incredible natural bounty of this coast and the whole lifestyle that's built around it.
And this really gets to the heart of it. What most of the world calls lobster, we Aussies call crayfish or crays. They're a total delicacy, but out here, they're so abundant that a local with just a $30 license can catch 8 of them per day. It's just a massive part of the whole coastal way of life.
And that brings us all the way back to where we started, that big question. After seeing the vibrant city, the huge empty coast, these super unique communities, and all this incredible nature, what's the answer? Is Perth and this whole region really defined by being dull, boring, and desolate?
You know, I think the conclusion is pretty clear. The very thing that might sound like a negative, its profound remoteness, is actually its greatest strength. For visitors who make the long journey out here, they will absolutely fall in love with that remoteness and the stunning, wild, untouched nature that comes right along with it.
So I guess I'll just leave you with this final thought. In a world that is more connected and crowded than ever before, is this kind of profound isolation a weakness, a limitation that needs to be overcome? Or could it actually be the rarest and most valuable treasure that Western Australia has to offer?